Okay, go ahead, but a time must come.
But a time must come in our progress when we are ready to open our eyes to the real truth of our being, and then the error of our egoistic free will must fall away from us. The rejection of the idea of egoistic free will does not imply a cessation of action because nature is the doer and carries out her action after this machinery is dispensed with, even as she did before it came into usage in the process of her evolution. In the man who has rejected it, it may even be possible for her to develop a greater action. For his mind may be more aware of all that his nature is by the self-creation of the past, more aware of the powers that environ and are working upon it to help or to hinder its growth, more aware too of the latent greater possibilities which it contains by virtue of all in it that is unexpressed, yet capable of expression, and this mind may be a free channel for the function of the Purusha to the greater possibilities that it sees, and a freer instrument for the response of nature for her resultant attempt at their development and realization. But the rejection of free will must not be a mere fatalism or idea of a natural determinism in the understanding without any vision of the real self in us. For then the ego still remains as our sole idea of self, and as that is always the instrument of Prakriti. We still act by the ego and with our will as her instrument, and the idea in us brings no real change, but only a modification of our intellectual attitude. We shall have accepted the phenomenal truth of the determination of our egoistic being and action by nature. We shall have seen our subjection, but we shall not have seen the unborn self within which is evoked the action of the gunas. We shall not have seen wherein lies our gate of freedom. Nature and ego are not all we are. There is the free soul, the Purusha.
Okay, so we'll start looking at what he's saying. The chapter is beyond the modes of nature. Now, modes of nature, you remember very well, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. Tamas is the iron chain that binds you physically, and Rajas is the silver chain that binds you physically and vitally, and Sattva is a golden chain that binds you in your thoughts. Okay? So, this is what is the modes of nature, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. All of them belong to the ignorance, okay, in the physical world. Level 1, as I said. Okay? Level 2 is the spiritual planes of consciousness, where you escape from and go beyond the modes of nature. The consciousness goes up. Okay? One thing you must understand, and it's a little subtle, but you have to understand. Many people think that you have to silence the mind, and then you go to the higher level, but the mind becomes silent. It's not exactly like that. Okay? Silencing the mind is, in the beginning, you try to make your mind as silent as possible. But when it is silent, as we have managed to do in Baroda, your consciousness goes up to the place of the self, which is the silent mind. When your consciousness is up there, okay, then you realize that your consciousness is in a condition where there is no movement of thought alone at all. Okay, but the mind in the body-mind life, in the level 1, continues to have thoughts. Okay, but they only seem to be shallow ripples. But thoughts are there. Okay? The vital also has its emotions. It continues. That is what they are explaining here. Okay? So, normally, we think that we are the body-mind life. Even if we don't think that mentally, we act in that way. Okay? My body, my vital and my mind, this is what I am. They are not conscious of the soul or the self. Now I read each sentence and we'll see exactly what he's doing, what he's saying. But a time must come in our progress. What progress? Not material progress, okay? Not vital progress, but spiritual progress. I'll tell you why I said this, okay? It's very interesting. I used to wear a pajama, okay? Even when I used to go to government offices, I had to go to the industrial sector and industry department I had to go because they were an industry in the press. So one day I was wearing a pair of trousers instead of pajama. And that inspector in the industry department said, "Oh, you have made a lot of progress." Because I was wearing a pair of trousers and not pajama. So that's not the progress that Sri is talking about here. The progress is spiritual progress. Okay? But a time must come in our progress when we are ready to open our eyes to the real truth of our being. And then the error of our egoistic free will must fall away from us. What does he mean by that? We normally think that we are free. We are doing exactly according to what I want to do. Nothing is being imposed on me. This is the usual idea. And we also take pride that nobody can control me. I can do exactly what I want. Okay? So this sort of pride is absolutely uncalled for because you really are a slave to nature. But the time comes when you realize that you are a slave to nature. That is what the slave is saying. Beyond the modes of nature. Beyond the modes of nature. You go beyond the sattva, rajas, tamas. Your consciousness rises out of the body and you feel yourself to be outside the body, mind, life. Okay? But a time must come in our progress and we are ready to open our eyes. Open our eyes, our consciousness becomes much more wide and true vision comes to the real truth of our being. And what is the real truth? I am not the body, mind, life. I am pure soul. I am pure self. Okay? Now, the rejection of the idea of egoistic free will does not imply a cessation of action because nature is a doer and carries out her action after this machinery is dispensed with, even as she did before it came into usage in the process of our evolution. So what Ranga is saying is that when you are in ignorance, it is nature which is controlling you. When you are out of ignorance and your consciousness rises to the self and you feel that you are not doing anything, okay, that's a cessation of action. You realize that you are not the doer at all. But that does not mean to say that your body, mind, life stops acting. Because before also when you were ignorant, it was the nature that was making you act. And now also when your consciousness has gone out, your body, mind, life is still being manipulated and forced into action by universal nature. So it continues. Your body will continue to eat, sleep and do whatever it thinks is right. Your vital will continue to have emotions and all sorts of things. And your mind will continue to also act. But thoughts will be there. In fact, I asked somebody who had a Brahmic consciousness and he told me, yes, thoughts are there. But they are like small ripples on the surface of the water. Okay? They have no importance. My consciousness is mostly absolutely silent. The consciousness is silent, not the mind, not the usual normal mind. Huh? So remember this. So nature is continuing to act. And then you realize so well that you are not the doer. It's a huge experience. When you realize that you are not the doer, nature is making you do things. You are just a machine. And the operator of that machine is universal nature. Okay? The machine just obeys what the operator is telling it to do. Okay? That's it. Nature is the doer and carries out her action after this machinery is disposed with, even as she did before it came into usage in the process of evolution. So when you are in ignorance, it is still nature which is manipulating you according to her own vision. And when your consciousness rises out, it is still nature which is doing whatever she wants with your body, mind, life. That's when you realize that, and you have no power to do anything about it. The body, mind, life continues with its old habits. But a stage comes, very interesting, which we will now discuss, and which is very, very clearly given in the Gita. Okay? You realize that the body-mind life is doing whatever because your soul has passively agreed to all these things. Okay? Even when you have wrong thoughts about somebody, even if you have hate for somebody, the soul has passively agreed to all this. Now you may wonder, the soul which is divine in essence, why is it doing this? Why is it allowing? Because of experience. You have to have experience of the physical world. If you don't know and you have got very rosy, idealistic ideas about what life in the world is, you will be wrong. You must know also all the negative things and you have to experience them. That is the reason why the soul in the beginning agrees to all the experience that is given to it or is about to be given to it in the physical world. So the soul agrees. But now you realize that, oh, the body-mind life has got so many wrong movements. So you stop your permission. You become the Anumanta. You are the passive Anumanta in the beginning, but now you become the active Anumanta. You say to yourself, you see that there is selfishness in you, and you say, I don't want this selfishness. This is the second stage in the yogic process. I don't want this evil thoughts to come into my mind. So you stop the wrong movements. You stop with your consciousness, you stop the wrong movements. Will they stop immediately? No. They will continue because of past momentum. The inertial movement. Okay? Like you switch off an engine and you switch off your motor and this motor will stop immediately? No, it won't. It will continue because of the energy that you put into it earlier. So what they call the inertial movement. You switch off, but the scooter will continue to go until it stops. So this is what happens also in your nature. When you say, no, I don't want, slowly, your anger or your selfishness or your greed will slowly disappear. Okay? So that's all the power that you have in the beginning. But you can't have absolute power to stop it. Then you realize you are the Anumanta and you have the power to stop these things after a certain effort. So this is what is being discussed here. We'll read this para, but I'm just giving you the idea of what is being discussed. Then you realize that you are the Jnata. You are the knower of your own self and you are the knower of your body-mind life. You become the Jnata. And then you realize that you are also the Bharta. Bharta means supporter. In the beginning you feel that you are not connected with your body-mind life at all. Body-mind life is an instrument given to me and I was using those instruments, but the instruments are not me. I am not a body-mind life. But now you realize that body-mind life has some sort of vague connection with you. After all, it was your body-mind life in which you were living. So there is a connection. So you become the Bharta. You are supporting your body-mind life. Then you reach a place where you start enjoying everything which you did not in the earlier stages. Okay? You become the Bhokta. At that level, remember the spiritual planes, there are 4 planes. Higher mind, elevated mind, intuitive mind. So as your consciousness goes on rising in these spiritual planes, a time comes when you start enjoying everything that you did not like in the beginning. Suppose you did not like a certain taste, okay? Like say bitter, okay? You did not like. But now even that becomes enjoyable. Okay? So that's it. Bhokta. Finally, when you rise to the supramental level or in the Gita the Purushottama level, okay, you become the master. And you have the power to even change your vital and even change your mind and vital. But the body, to a certain extent it is possible to change. But not entirely. It remains physical. Okay? And that was the work that Mata was trying to do, even change their physical. So, many yogis change their mind becomes pure, and only good thoughts come in. Many yogis, even of a superior quality, can even change their vital. But nobody has been able to change the physical in this sense that you are still subject to disease and death. So, that will happen when the next stage of evolution comes. The supramental body will be not subject to death and disease. Okay? So this is the gradations that is being told. Beyond the modes of nature, this is what happens. Now I come back to the text. Okay? In the man, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th line from the top of the para. In the man who has rejected it. It is what? Nature. Okay? Who has rejected it. Okay? It may even be possible for her to develop a greater action. So action continues, but your consciousness is not the doer, and many people have the idea that now we will stop doing any, and they do. The ascetic thinks that now I am not doing anything, so I can stop. Okay? I can stop doing. I just go and sit on a mountain top, or I go to a cave and I don't do anything. Don't act in the physical world. But Srila is saying, nature can make you more active. That's exactly what happened to Sri Aurobindo. Okay? Although his mind was silent, okay, in Baroda and Pune, he went to Pune also, he became more active in the physical world. He went to, in Pune, he went to inspect bomb factory. Privately, it was a secret bomb factory, he went to see that. And then he gave a lecture in Pune, in a college. And he didn't know what to say. He told Lele, I don't know what to say, I have to give a talk in the college. So Lele said, just look upward, concentrate, and you will see that the words are coming into your mouth by some higher power, and you need not worry about that. And that's exactly what happened. Srivanu opened himself up, and the words started coming down directly through his mouth, not through the mind. Okay? It came down and he was speaking, and at the end of the talk, there was a huge applause. But Srivanu's mind, not consciousness, mind was not knowing what it is saying. Okay? So, action can increase, not decrease, okay, when you go to the self. Okay? Physical action can increase. That's what he said.
Ranga,
Yes.
In the man who has rejected it, it may be the egoistic free will or nature.
Yes, I think you are right. Okay. There is a correspondence between the two, but rejected the free will. I think you are more right. That is correct. I also was thinking of that, but I was talking, so I got carried away by the stream of. You are right.
It is said, her
nature is really
she or her. Yes, that's right.
Yeah, exactly. It struck me at that time only, but I continued to speak it. It's correct. You are right. Okay? It's the egoistic free will which you are rejecting. Okay? Which is part of nature. So in that way it is not absolutely wrong, but anyway, you are right. Okay, so, in the man who has rejected it, the egoistic will, okay, his mind may be more aware of all that is nature. Wait. It may be even possible for her, now her is nature, correct, to develop greater action. For his mind may be more aware of all that in nature is by the self-creation of the past. You become the jnata. You become more aware and you know things by the self-creation of the past, more aware of the powers that environ and are working upon it to help or to hinder its growth. Okay? So, he is more aware too of the latent greater possibilities which it contains by virtue of all in it that is unexpressed, yet capable of expression. By this he means that you graduate from Anumanta to Jnata to Bharta, Bhokta to Ishwar. These are the potentialities in you which develop if you are still actively pursuing your perfection, which it contains by virtue of all it that is unexpressed, yet capable of expression. You are the divine, and you realize that you are divine, and that is it becomes expressed. The fact that we are divine remains unexpressed throughout our life, but when you go to the higher levels of consciousness, it starts becoming very clear that you are part of the divine. Ansha Sanatana, your soul is an eternal portion of the divine. It can contain that. And This mind may be a freer channel for the sanction of the Purusha to the greater possibilities that it sees, and a freer instrument for the response of nature. So now your mind also, which is constantly having thoughts of its own, now becomes more or less a responsive instrument, and whatever the Purusha wants, it responds in that way. Okay? It becomes a faithful instrument. So you have to use the word freer instrument for the response of nature, for her resultant attempt at a development and realization. The body-mind life becomes a good instrument for the will of the higher levels of consciousness. But the rejection of free will must not be a mere fatalism or idea of natural determinism in the understanding without any vision of the real self in us. What Shiva is saying is, oh, I am not the doer, and I am seeing that my body-mind life is being completely determined. There is fate. Fatalism, Shiva is using the word fatalism. It is fated to be a slave. So I don't need to do anything. That is exactly what you should avoid. That's what Shiva is saying. Okay? But the rejection of free will must not be a mere fatalism or idea of natural determinism in the understanding without any vision of the real self in us. We must realize that there is a self, and the self can change things, and the determinism of the universal nature, we can change that. Okay? We are not absolutely slaves of nature. The higher you go, the more you become free from the slavery of nature. The more you become free. Okay? As you keep going higher and higher. So this idea that there is absolute fate at all levels of human nature and human life is not true. It depends on your consciousness. If you go higher and higher, you become freer and freer. But in the beginning, without any power to change anything in the lower. But as you keep going higher and higher, that power also increases. Okay? And the power becomes absolute at the Purushottama level, the highest level. Okay? That's what Shri is talking. But the rejection of free will must not be a mere fatalism or idea of natural determinism. Natural determinism, the fixed laws of the physical world in nature. That's what I mean by natural determinism. In the understanding, without any vision of the real self in us, we must realize that we have a real self in us which is not subject to the laws of physical nature. Okay? And beyond that, beyond the modes of nature, you can go. For then, the ego still remains as our sole idea of self, and as that is always the instrument of Prakriti, we still act by the ego and with our will as an instrument, and the idea in us brings no real change. No real change where? In the body-mind life. Okay. In the beginning. You have become free, but the body-mind life is continuing to be a slave to nature. But only a modification of our intellectual attitude. Right now I am thinking that I am body-mind life. But when you go to the self, your attitude changes entirely. You realize that you are not body-mind life. But that does not change the actions and thoughts and vital emotions of the body-mind life. They remain the same. Only when you realize that you are Anumanta and you say, I don't want these things, then slowly they start disappearing. The wrong thoughts, wrong actions and wrong movements of the vital. They start changing very slowly. Okay? But only a modification of our intellectual attitude. We shall have accepted the phenomenal truth of the determination of our egoistic being and action by nature. We shall have seen our subjection. I see clearly now when I am in the self that my body-mind life is a slave to nature. I see that very clearly. But we shall not have seen the unborn self within, which is above the action of the gunas. So even when you are in the self, okay, you are not seeing your real being, which is even beyond, okay, which is above the action of the gunas. We shall not have seen wherein lies our gate of freedom. Okay. That's still, a little bit of ignorance is still there when you rise in consciousness. Nature and ego are not all we are. There is the free soul, the Purusha. So, there is a gradation. But in India the idea has always been that if you go to the self it's enough, because you are free. Yes, the body-mind life is not free, but who cares? Because the body-mind life is going to die. So why should I bother about that? I am pure consciousness. In India that was the idea. Here comes Ranga and the Gita and they change all that. No, it's not true. So you have to not reject the physical world, but with your higher consciousness now come down into the physical world and help the work of God in the physical world. Gita also says that lokas sangrahanartham and also the loka hiti rata. You have to do work for mankind. But the idea of the evolution as Swayambhu enunciates is not there in the Gita. So, we go to the next paragraph. Okay? But in what consists this freedom of the Purusha? He is going to discuss very clearly, okay, what is meant by the Purusha being free. The body-mind life is not free, but your Purusha, your consciousness is free. So next one, someone has to read. Who will read? The first one, Seema read. The next one,
I can read, Ranga.
Okay, go ahead, Tarika. Go ahead, read. But in what consists?
But in what consists this freedom of the Purusha? The Purusha of the current Sankhya philosophy is free in the essence of his being. But because he is the non-doer, akarta, and in so far as he permits nature to throw on the inactive soul her shadow of action, he becomes bound phenomenally by the actions of the gunas and cannot recover his freedom except by dissociation from her and by cessation of her activities. If then a man casts from him the idea of himself as the doer or of the works as his, if, as the Gita enjoins, he fixes himself in the view of himself as the inactive non-doer, Atmanam akartaram, and all action as not his own, but nature's, as the play of her gunas, will not like a result follow? The Sankhya Purusha is the giver of the sanction, but a passive sanction only, anumati. The work is entirely nature's. Essentially, he is the witness and sustainer, not the governing and active consciousness of the universal Godhead. He is the soul that sees and accepts. As a spectator accepts the representation of a play he is watching, not the soul that both governs and watches the play planned by himself and staged in his own being. If then he withdraws the sanction, if he refuses to acknowledge the illusion of doing by which the play continues, he ceases also to be the sustainer and the action comes to a stop. Since it is only for the pleasure of the witnessing conscious soul that nature performs it, and only by his support that she can maintain it. Therefore, it is evident that the Gita's conception of the relations of the Purusha and Prakriti are not the Sankhyas, since the same movement leads to a quite different result. In one case to cessation of works, in the other to a great, a selfless and desireless, a divine action. In the Sankhya, soul and nature are two different entities. In the Gita, they are two aspects, two powers of one self-existent being. The soul is not only giver of the sanction, but lord of nature. Ishvara, through her enjoying the play of the world, through her executing divine will and knowledge in a scheme of things, supported by his sanction and existing by his immanent presence, existing in his being, governed by the law of his being and by the conscious will within it. To know to respond to live in the divine being and nature of this soul, is the object of withdrawing from the ego and its action. One rises then above the lower nature of the gunas to the higher divine nature.
So this is exactly he's telling the difference between Sankhya and the Gita. And Prabhupada subscribes fully to the ideas of the Gita. Okay. Sankhya is relatively true at the lower levels of consciousness. When you are in the ignorance of level 1, then Sankhya is absolutely correct. But when you rise higher and higher, the Sankhya truths undergo a change. Okay. Purusha and Prakriti actually start appearing to be only one and not two. Okay. So we'll read each one and see. But first of all, you must have a clear idea of what Sankhya philosophy is. In Sankhya, it's a dualistic system. It's not Advaita. It is Dvaita. That means the ultimate reality are two. Chit and Shakti. Chit is Purusha, consciousness. Shakti is Prakriti, only force, acting, mechanically and unconsciously. This is the Sankhya philosophy. And when the two come together, they create. Okay? It's like in Sankhya very clearly, this is very interesting image they give you, that the Chit is pure consciousness. He is totally, fully conscious with his eyes open, but he is lame. Okay? And the Prakriti he's got very solid legs, but he is blind. So this is the image. So to create anything, suppose there is a forest you have to climb, how to do it? The blind man makes the lame man sit on his shoulders. Now both sight is there and movement is there, and they can cross the forest. So this is the Sankhya philosophy, that they are two separate, but they have to come together to create the world. This is the idea. But it is slightly different. Yes. It is slightly different. Yes. Tarika, you're saying something?
No, Ranga, no.
Okay. At home, huh? Okay. So, this is what Sri is saying, that is not the entire truth. As you are in this second level of consciousness, as you keep going higher and higher, the soul can assert itself and it can use the Shakti. Chit can start using the Shakti consciously with her own will. That is what is being said. Okay? So, now I read each sentence. But in what consists this freedom of the Purusha? Is it absolutely full right from the beginning? That's what Sri pointed out. The Purusha of the current Sankhya philosophy is free in the essence of its being. It's free in the essence of its being, but not in its details, not in the body-mind life. Because he is a non-doer, akarta. He is not doing anything at all. The consciousness is absolutely static. In us, the consciousness is always saying and acting. Oh, I have to do this today. I have to attend my class. I have to go to the market and buy something. I have to meet that person today. All this is the mind which is deciding. So all these decisions, okay, sarvarambha parityagi is the word used in the Gita, that you stop initiating any action in your mind. Okay. So you are the akarta. And in so far as he permits nature to throw on the inactive soul her shadow of action, he becomes bound phenomenally by the action of the gunas and cannot recover his freedom except by dissociation from her and by cessation of her activities. So, what is meant is that in our condition, all of us who are in ignorance, the nature, the body-mind life, all the actions that it is doing, it is attributing to the Purusha, the consciousness, which is not really the soul in us, but is the representative of the soul in that sense. It is the ego. The ego is the representative of our soul in the ignorance. Can you hear me? My screen has changed, that's why I'm asking. Is everybody able to hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
Ranga.
Ranga, we can hear you but can't see you.
Okay.
No, we can hear and see you. We can hear and see you, Ranga.
That has disappeared. Okay. So,
No, we can hear and see you, Rangada, very clearly.
Archanali, I cannot see him.
I can see
You are
also.
joining through.
I can
Oh,
see him
Those
and
who have joined. Now,
Okay.
now he went. Now you have disappeared, Rangada.
Okay. Now I'm
Now-
clicking on the
Now you.
camera. Now you will be able to see me. Those who have
See you.
the camera on, they'll be able to see me. Anyway, doesn't matter. So, this is what is being said. Okay, so I read this sentence. Insofar as he permits nature to throw on the inactive soul her actions. So what is happening is, our ego is actually, we think is a soul. And the ego is agreeing, because the ego itself thinks that it is doing all these things. Okay? So it's put philosophically in this sense that Prakriti is throwing all the shadows of her actions on the soul, and the soul gets completely confused, and the soul thinks that yes, I am doing all these things. Okay? That's the way to do it. Okay? The reflections of are thrown on the soul. Okay? Nature thrown on the inactive soul in a shadow of action. It becomes bound phenomenally by the action of the guna and cannot recover its freedom except by dissociation from her. So now he has to say, neti neti, I am not the body, I am not the mind, I am not the vital. And then he can slowly, by repeating this thing in his consciousness to himself, he can separate himself. The soul separates itself from body, mind, life. Takes a long time, maybe sometimes even lives, but ultimately it can happen if you are interested and you are pursuing this Sankhya Yoga in a very active manner. If then a man casts from him the idea of himself as a doer, okay, or if the works as his, okay, the works are not mine but nature's, if you realize that, if, as the Gita enjoins means advises, tells you, he fixes himself in the view of himself as an inactive non-doer, you realize that you are not the doer, Atmanam Akartaram. And all action, as not his own but nature's, as the play of the gunas, will not a like result follow, will not a similar result follow. The word like is used by Sri Aurobindo in the sense of similar. So, this is how you have to read it. As the play of the gunas, you realize, will not a like result follow? In other words, the soul has realized that it is not acting. So, will the body mind life also will it not stop acting? That's what he is asking. Okay? But the truth is, no, it does not. The body mind life continues to act. Okay? That's what he is saying. Okay? The Sankhya Purusha is the giver of the sanction, Anumanta, but a passive sanction. In the beginning, you are agreeing to whatever your body mind life is doing, and you think, okay, even when you have a negative or you hate somebody, you feel that I am hating. Okay? So you identify, the Purusha identifies itself with the emotions and the thoughts. I am liking this person, I am disliking this person. Actually, it's the nature which is doing that, but the soul, when it realizes that, it has to tend to separate itself. That's a Sankhya Yoga. Okay? The Sankhya Purusha is the giver of the sanction, but a passive sanction. It's not an active sanction. Only. Anumati, the permission. The work is entirely nature's. Essentially, he is the witness and sustainer. Witness, Sakshi. Sustainer, Bharta. Okay? You are supporting, not the governing and active consciousness of the universal Godhead. The governing and active consciousness, Ishvara. Okay? The Jnata and the Ishvara. As a spectator, he is giving a very interesting example. As a spectator accepts the representation of a play he is watching, not the soul that both governs and watches the play, planned by himself and staged in his own being. Okay? So, when you are watching a play, you are watching and only seeing. Only this play is within yourself. Your own body mind life is a play, and you have agreed to that play, actually. You are the author of that play. Okay. In the beginning. Okay. Planned by himself and staged in his own being. But you are the witness. If then he withdraws the sanction, okay, I don't like this hate in me, I don't like this selfishness in me, then you say, I don't want it. You stop the permission. Okay, you try to stop it. That's what he did say. Not the soul that goes governs. If then he, the soul, withdraws the sanction, if he refuses to acknowledge the illusion of doing by which the play continues, he ceases also to be the sustainer. Okay? He is separating himself from the body-mind life. He ceases to be the sustainer, and the action comes to a stop. Action is your consciousness. Since it is only for the pleasure of the witnessing conscious soul that nature performs it. In the Sankhya philosophy, it is very clearly, whatever nature is doing, she is doing for the pleasure of the Purusha. Okay. In other words, whatever nature is doing, creating, nature, universal nature is creating trees, okay, animals, men, different types of things. All that she is doing is for the pleasure of the Purusha. The divine is enjoying whatever his own Shakti is doing. Okay. So this is at the individual level also is like that. It's only for the pleasure of the witnessing conscious soul that nature performs it, and only by his support that she can maintain it. But the support also goes away. Therefore, it is evident that the Gita's conception of the relations of the Purusha and Prakriti are not the Sankhya's. The Sankhya's, the relation remains exactly the same. Okay? Since the same movement leads to a quite different result. And what is the difference he is going to tell us. Okay? In one case, to cessation of works. In one case, the consciousness is not acting at all. Okay? In the other, to a great, selfless and desireless divine action. So in the Gita, you get the purity of consciousness, but with that purity you come down into the physical world and continue to act in the interest of the world and of others. In the Sankhya, soul and nature are two different entities. They are different, eternally different. In the Gita, there are two aspects, two powers of one self-existent being. Purusha and Prakriti are not ultimate realities as in Sankhya. In Vedanta, Purusha and Prakriti are aspects of the Satchidananda, Chit Shakti. Chit Shakti are not the ultimate reality. The ultimate reality is Purushottama, okay? The Ishvara. And Shakti also is his power, and Chit also is his power. Okay? There is the Advaita view. Advaita view means the Vedantic view. Gita is one of the main components of the Advaita philosophy. The Vedanta is, as they say, Prasthana Traya. I am talking of the philosophical aspect. Vedanta is consisting of the Brahma Sutras of Badarayana, the Upanishads, the entire body of Upanishads, and the Gita. These three constitute the Vedanta. And the other branches are there, the Dvaita, the Sankhya, and the Bheda of Ramanuja. All these are different. They are offshoots of Vedanta, not really Vedanta. Okay? So, in the Sankhya, soul and nature are two different entities, different forever. Huh? In the Gita, there are two aspects, two powers of one self-existent being. Which is that self-existent being? As I said, Ishvara or Purushottama, and in Swayambhus, the supramental. That's it. The soul is not only giver of the sanction, but lord of nature. So the soul need not passively accept the limitations of the body-mind life. It can become the lord of nature. That is possible. Ishvara, through her enjoying the play of the world, through her executing divine will and knowledge in the scheme of things, supported by His sanction, and existing by His immanent presence. In other words, the divine is enjoying everything that is being done in the physical world. Existing in His being, governed by the law of His being, and by the conscious will in it. Now a question arises, you may wonder, how is the divine allowing all this evil and all these things? Okay. In His view, it is not evil, it is just movements, negative movements and positive movements. He is not creating good and bad. Okay. He is not creating, He is not the creator of all these things. It is nature which creates all these things. Okay. So, to know, to respond to live in the divine being and nature of this soul is the object of withdrawing from the ego and its action in the Gita. Okay. Remember, we are reading the essays on the Gita, Satyajit is expounding the Gita. Okay. Not his own thought. Sometimes he brings in his own thought because his own thought goes beyond the Gita. To know, to respond to live in the divine being and nature of his soul is the object of withdrawing from the ego and its action. One rises then above the lower nature of the gunas to the higher divine nature. So, remember also, in Sankhya there is only Prakriti and Purusha. In the Gita there is Para Prakriti and Apara Prakriti. So Apara Prakriti is nature, lower nature which is unconscious and mechanical. But there is a Para Prakriti, the divine nature, which is absolutely pure. Okay? So that what we discuss. Oh my God, 47. They have crossed already 7 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. We stop here today. Next time we'll pick up the movement. But I hope everything is clear. It depends on which angle of vision you are having. A Sankhya view is very limited, and the Gita's view is much, much wider and much more true. And Sriyamdu adds to that the evolution. That even this mechanical nature in the physical world can be changed at a certain level. Okay? Au revoir everybody. Have a nice day.